images up on the video while I talk about them. So we'll get into this. My first ever trip was going to the South Island. I live on the North Island of the country. So this means that we had to take a ferry across from the North Island down to the South Island. The ferry ride is about 4 hours, and you can take your car with you. So that is what we did. This was a family trip, and we had a van, because I'm a fairly large family. So we drove down the whole country, and we explored the South Island. I was probably about 3 or 4 years old at the time, so a lot of it I don't actually remember, but some of it I do. So these images that I show are the places that I visited, and we'll just tell you a little about each place that I've been. This is Banks Peninsula, otherwise called Akaroa. Now, this part of New Zealand is to the east of Christchurch, the city of Christchurch. And if you ever go to Akaroa, it has a very French feel to it. There's a lot of French people there, and obviously food and the culture there is a lot more French than New Zealand. It's a very beautiful place, and I'd love to go back there sometime. Now this is Milford Sound. This is on the west coast, pretty much near the bottom of the South Island. This is probably some of the most beautiful parts of the country down here. Its climate is very wet because it's on the west coast and it gets all the rain and sort of bad weather, but it's very beautiful there. That tall mountain peak that you can see is called Mitre Peak, and just to the right, I think, is an airfield that is a little bit hairy to get in and out of, but it's, like I said, it's some of the most beautiful scenery you'll ever see down there. So it's in an area called Fiordland, and if you're going to visit New Zealand, you have to go to Milford Sound and around that area. It's quite amazing. Now this sign is quite interesting. This is located in a town called Bluff, and Bluff is as far south as you can go on the South Island. Well, pretty much anyway. It's the furthest south town you can visit, and the sign is there, and it tells you how far away other cities are and landmarks. So as you can see, it tells you how far away the equator is, and Tokyo, Sydney, London, New Zealand. So it's quite a well-known landmark. Alright, this photograph is of our tallest mountain, called Mount Cook, named after the famous voyager from the UK or England, who supposedly discovered and mapped New Zealand. This is located around the Queenstown area, and obviously there's ski fields and mountain climbing areas down there, and again, very beautiful. The South Island definitely has the better scenery over the North Island, but still just as good. Well, yeah, it's definitely better. If you're going to visit, you have to visit the South Island. New Zealand is known for the large amount of sheep that it has. If I remember rightly, sheep outnumber the human population 10 to 1. Now, this is Christchurch, the second largest city in New Zealand. Obviously, Christchurch doesn't look like this anymore because of the recent earthquakes that damaged a very large part of the city, which is very sad. And it won't ever look like this again. But hopefully once it's been rebuilt, that it'll look even better. So everyone's looking forward to that. Now this is a place called Wharariki Beach, which is in Golden Bays, at the top of the South Island. I remember this as we headed home on our trip, and we stopped along here, and we could see this big rock with a hole going through it. And, it's quite amazing to look at. And now my most favourite place in the country, Wellington, which is the capital city, and I lived here for a while, and I really miss it, and I want to go back so badly, because it's like I said, it's the coolest place. It's just the best city to live, and everyone's so friendly, and there's so much to see and do. It's so cool. I love Wellington. It's a very small city, and it's very sort of compact, and everyone lives very close together because it's surrounded by hills, and just because it's situated in an area that doesn't have a lot of land space to build, so it's very easy to get around and just go out and do stuff. It's so handy. And this is Island Bay, which is a suburb of Wellington, and this is where I used to live. So this is the very south end of the North Island now. We've moved up to the North Island. Now this is sort of like a very typical green valley that you see in the North Island around where I live at the moment. You just look out the window and you see like these rolling hills, and mountain ranges. It's very nice. Now this place is a town called Rotorua. It's one of our busiest tourist towns because it's got great history and a lot of attractions. It's a very volcanic area, and it has a lot of geysers and mud pools. And when you visit Rotorua, you'll notice a very distinct smell of sulphur from the geysers and mud pools. You can compare it to rotten eggs, but it's still a beautiful, beautiful place to visit despite the smell. I mean, it's not even that bad. You get used to it very quickly. But yeah, very touristy. And currently we're right in the middle of winter. And this is a very typical look every morning whenever there's a frost and it's very cold. But it's such a good view every morning when the winter sun just takes over the sky and the sky is pitch blue and the sun just peeks through the fog as it slowly lifts throughout the morning, and it just lights up behind the hills, and it's so beautiful. Now, this may look familiar to a lot of people. This is Hobbiton. So, Hobbiton is situated in about the middle of the North Island, just on somebody's farm that the makers of the film, The Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films, purchased or are borrowing. I'm not sure how it works. But this is near a town called Matamata. It's about a 20-minute drive out of the town, and they do tourist buses and things through it, so you can go and visit Hobbiton and where they filmed it. And now, moving fairly far north, this is the biggest city of Auckland. Auckland has roughly 1/4 of the entire New Zealand population. So it's by far our biggest city, and it is quite busy, but it's still a great city. Most of my family live there, so I am very often in Auckland visiting them and exploring. And as you can see, the skyline is pretty impressive. Well, not really, but it's got that sky tower that you can see. And if you haven't already seen one of my previous videos, I went flying and I took my camera and we flew around Auckland City and surrounding areas. So if you want to see that, just go look back in my videos and you can see that one. And the last place that I will show you, this is very far north now in a place called Bay of Islands. I've only been up there once in my life. This was our second family trip. We drove up there. Again, it's very beautiful. So much history of how New Zealand began up in that area. Places called Paia, Russell, Whangarei. Up there, it's very nice. Yeah, I'd love to go back there. And obviously, because it's the furthest place north, it gets the warmer temperatures, and often very sunny up there. So yes, that is where I've been in my own country. Now I'll change to the places I've been overseas and where I would like to go. The first trip that I ever took overseas, if you can call it actually going overseas, was to a place called Norfolk Island. Now this is located roughly halfway between New Zealand and Australia. Obviously it's very popular with New Zealand and Australian tourists. The population is only about 4,000 or 5,000 people of Norfolk Islanders, so they get a lot of tourists to keep the place running and alive. It's a very small island, but full of history and amazing places to go and see. It's got great beaches, very clean blue water, and one interesting thing about Norfolk Island is that a lot of the convicts from either Australia or Britain were sent here to do labour, and a lot of amazing stories through that history. And there's tours and shows that you can go to learn all about the history of the island. It's quite a fascinating place. And now over to Australia, where I visited about, I can't even remember, 4 or 5 times maybe. Australians and New Zealanders have a very close relationship, and you go back and forth between the two places a lot. It's very cheap to fly over and have a holiday. Some people just go for the weekend or whatever and just shop or whatever, then come home the next week. But Australia is an amazing place. I've been to pretty much all 4 corners of the massive country that it is. The first place I visited was Sydney, and around an area called Hunter Valley. And the first thing I noticed coming from New Zealand is the heat. It's so much hotter. It was unbearable for me, but still an amazing place. So big, so vast, so much to see. Then I also visited Brisbane and the Gold Coast very briefly, but an amazing place to go. So many sandy white beaches and so hot, so sunny. And then I headed over to the very northern middle point of Darwin. Almost forgot what it was called. Yes, so Darwin. So it got even hotter up in the Northern Territory. It's very tropical up there. That's the first thing that struck me, was how blue and tropical it was. I saw a lot of the Aboriginal Aborigine people, the indigenous Australian people. They seem to like it in the hotter places. So it was very interesting learning about that culture and how the people sort of survive. Even till this day, they live quite similar to the way they did way back when. But on this trip was the first time I came across a snake, because we don't have snakes in New Zealand, and this was quite frightening because it was just on a footpath where I was walking, and I just freaked out. I didn't know what to do. And it turns out it was a brown snake, which is apparently like the most poisonous snake in Australia. So I'm glad I didn't get any closer to it or have anything else to do with it. But somewhere completely different to where I've ever been, up in Darwin and the surrounding areas. And I'll never forget that trip. It was quite amazing. And then on a separate occasion, I've been to Melbourne, which is the south-east corner. Quite an amazing city, very cultural and, I don't know, my sister and brother-in-law and nephew live there, so I'm looking forward to going back there and visiting them again soon, hopefully. And then I went over to the west coast, to the city of Perth. My other sister lived there for a while, and I went and visited her there. Again, just completely different, and so amazing how far away Perth is from anywhere else. I think I heard somewhere that Perth is the most isolated city than any other city in the world, which is amazing. Alright, and my most recent overseas experience was when I went to America. My dad went on a business trip, and he took us with him. My brother and I and my mum, we went over and had a bit of a holiday. First off, we landed in LA, but we didn't stay. We went straight on to Dallas, Texas, and this was just something else for me. It was completely different to anything I've ever experienced. I mean, the heart of America, Dallas, Texas. You know, such a huge place to go to. Coming from a rural town in New Zealand with 4,000 people, going to this massive city where everything is huge, and forgive me, Americans, but where everyone was huge. Not everyone, obviously, but people were big over there. But this was just quite a shock to my system. Still very amazing to go to. I'll never forget it, because America is something else, really. If you've never been, it's just so different to anywhere you ever go. But looking back, I really did enjoy it a lot. One thing that I will always remember is walking down the street where President Kennedy was shot. Like whenever I watch a video or whatever of that, incident. It just sort of sends a shiver down my spine that I stood there in the same place that that huge moment in history happened. It was quite mind-blowing, really. And then after we finished in Dallas, we headed back to Los Angeles, and we went to Disneyland, which again was just something so out of the ordinary for me. The sheer size of Disneyland and everything that is included with it was quite mind-blowing. But obviously I enjoyed it so much. Disneyland, I mean, it's a place where everyone wants to go to. And yeah, I just couldn't get over how many people there were and just how long you had to wait in line for the rides. But I really enjoyed all the roller coasters. The Mickey Mouse one where you do the loop around the Mickey Mouse head. That was so cool. I think we spent about 3 days going to Disneyland because you need to spend a long time to do all the rides. I mean, we've got one theme park in New Zealand where you can do all the rides in like 4 or 5 hours. So it just doesn't compare. So this was something else. It was extraordinary. And we drove up to what's it called? Hollywood, and all that area. I didn't get to see a lot of it because we're just sort of passing through, but again, very impressive, and just like you see from the movies. Quite extraordinary. And then we went to Universal Studios, home of the big Hollywood blockbuster films. And I really enjoyed this part. This was the best part of my trip. My favourite ride was the Jurassic Park one, where you sat in a boat and you went through a river thing, and all these dinosaurs came down and tried to eat you. That was so cool. I remember that so well. So good. But yeah, I would really love to give America another chance, because I think I was too overwhelmed. I was only about maybe 12 or 13 when I went, and it was just such a shock to see this massive place. But I would love to go back and visit some new areas. I would love to try San Francisco or New York. And obviously there'd be so many other places I would have to check out. So some other areas of the world that I would love to explore. I'd love to go up to Canada. It just sounds so amazing. And again, I'm sure I'd be astounded by how big the country is. That's the thing, coming from such a small country where you can get to anywhere so easily and quick. I just want to go somewhere where there's just so much space and so much to see. So I'm sure Canada would be able to do that for me. I've got friends that are Canadian, so they often go there and have holidays, and I'd just love to be able to join them. And it just sounds so cool. If I were to live anywhere else in the world, I would definitely consider Canada. Then I would love love to also pop over to the UK and Europe. I'd love to explore where my ancestry comes from. I'm sort of Scottish and English, I suppose. I'd love to just to sort of find out the history of where I came from. That'd be great. And I'd love to visit Ireland. It's all just so ancient. All of Europe is, there's so much to learn. I love history and learning about new places. So I mean, that's the place to go, really. Some of the oldest parts of the world. Going to somewhere like Italy, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, France, Denmark, all of those places would just be a dream to go to. I mean, most of you are so lucky for just being able to get around quite easily in those places. The thing is, if you live in a country like New Zealand, you're as far away as you can be from anywhere. It's so isolated, and I mean, you've got to have money to be able to visit these sort of places. So someday, I'd just love to get there and explore those places. It would just be so cool. But I mean, I feel very lucky to live where I do. Such a wonderful and beautiful place. And I mean, I'm sure a lot of you would love to come here just as much as I would love to go to somewhere where you are. It's quite an amazing world that we live in, with so much to see and learn about. So yeah, that's where I've been and where I would love to go. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're all looking after yourselves. And I guess I'll speak to you